You know, Stanley would say, look, we gotta earn every scene with this character, every single moment. Or you just know when you don't have that fire burning that day, or if I was tired, it just, you know, and I'd bring it upon myself, you know, because I demand a lot of myself. At times that we couldn't get it, you know what I mean? And it was just like,
Director Stanley Kubrick's methods of working with his actors and pushing them to their limit has become stuff of legend. Whether he was making Scatman Crothers cry with exhaustion after 60 takes of this zoom shot in The Shining,
You see tears, there will be tears of joy.
or inadvertently scratching Malcolm McDowell's cornea with those eyelid clamps in A Clockwork Orange, he was patient and unwavering in his search for the best version of a scene.
Remember saying to him once, well, look, Stanley, look, how do you direct? I mean, what's your style? And he said, I really don't know. I never know what I want, but I do know what I don't want.
So when it was announced that Kubrick had cast star couple Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman in his first film in over a decade, the erotic thriller Eyes Wide Shut, film buffs and the general public collectively lost their minds. Kubrick's meticulous reputation as a director, as well as the tabloid press surrounding Cruise and Kidman's relationship, it just created this perfect storm of wild speculation and inaccurate rumors. Like how everyone on set was miserable, or how there were on-site sex therapists to help convince Nicole Kidman to shoot her love scenes with Cruise.
Well, I was a junkie, I think, at one stage.
but I was wearing dresses.
Yeah. Different movie.
I mean, there's so much of this kind of stuff surrounding Kubrick anyway. His sudden death prior to Eyes Wide Shut only enhanced all these tantalizing details and conspiracy theories we've all heard about. And he's been talked about just nonstop. If you sat an ape in front of a computer to bash random keys on a keyboard, he'd probably come across a Kubrick video essay within seconds. But I'm not interested in whether or not Kubrick helped shoot a fake moon landing for the government. I'm interested in how he worked with his actors, especially how he worked with Cruise and Kidman. What actually happened? Like, what was their process? Why does this movie hold the Guinness World Record for the longest film shoot at 400 days? You know, I want to cut through all of the Kubrick madness and give you the facts. And with a bunch of different behind-the-scenes interviews and articles and 4 incredibly detailed books, we can get a rare glimpse of exactly how Kubrick worked with the cast of Eyes Wide Shut, for better or worse, to get exactly what he wanted. When it came to casting his mysterious new film, it was reported widely after the fact that Kubrick had always intended to cast a married couple. Cruise actually denies this in a press conference during the promotion of the film.
You know, that's what someone said in all the time that we've spent with Stanley and Jan and Christian. No one else has ever said that he wanted a couple. That someone else said that. Stanley never said that. That's not true.
You can answer that.
Jan Kubrick.
Not true, completely irrelevant, absolutely not true.
For the part of Dr. Bill Harford alone, the book Kubrick and Odyssey cites a list that Kubrick made in one of his notebooks of potential actors. Steve Martin, Dustin Hoffman, Warren Beatty, Alan Alda, Albert Brooks, Bill Murray. Then you got Sam Shepard, Woody Allen, and Tom Hanks? I just can't see my boy Tom Hanks getting in with all that naughty stuff.
There's a snake in my boot.
But according to director and friend Sidney Pollack, Kubrick had his eye on Cruise as early as 1993, and he especially liked his performance in Born on the 4th of July. But he wanted to know more about him. One thing about Kubrick is that he loved spending hours on the phone just talking to anybody else in the industry. And according to Pollack, while he was shooting The Firm, Kubrick just grilled him about Cruise constantly. Quote, he used to call me all the time, a couple of times a week, and just ask me thousands of questions about Cruise. What's he like? What does he like? What does he eat? What does he do? What does he dress like? Does he come to work? Is he on time? Is he not on time? Is he opinionated? Does he ask? Does he bug you about the script? How good an actor is he? And so on and so on. So I really feel like I have convinced him to use Cruise because Cruise is a wonderful guy. So I would go to Tom and I would say, listen, I've been on the phone with Stanley Kubrick, and he's really interested in you for this movie. But if you do the movie, it's a Stanley Kubrick movie. Just shut up and do the movie. That seems pretty wild to me, that he would just do that much research on an actor before considering them. It speaks to his notorious, meticulous nature. He did the same thing with Nicole.
And then I heard from my agent that Stanley had been calling for about 9 months for different tapes of my work and had been seeing things. And so obviously I had no idea, and my agent hadn't told me because it wasn't a job offer or anything. It was just sort of interest, I think.
After the firm wrapped, Kubrick and Cruise began getting to know one another through fax machines. That's normal. They didn't even talk about the movie at first. It was mainly about airplanes and the effect of aviation on World War II. Nerds. A year later, Kubrick faxed an official offer to Nicole Kidman to star in the film with Cruise. She had no hesitation. Quote, "I didn't read the script. I didn't care what the story was originally. I wanted to work with Stanley." Cruise's response to the fax was nervousness, a decidedly un-Cruise-like reaction.
What do I say to him? I mean, I'm nervous, And then I start thinking, you start, well, look, he's a human being just like me. Everything's gonna be fine.
After reading the script, Kubrick asked Cruise to meet with him in England to talk it over. Due to time constraints, Cruise flew by helicopter after Kubrick had given him GPS coordinates and set up a landing pad in his backyard. That's normal.
The helicopter came down and we discussed the helicopter and what kind it was and how many hours that I'd flown in these helicopters. And he walked me around the grounds. And I just remember thinking, this guy's kind of a magical, wonderful guy.
Once they were cast and Nicole had a chance to read the script, she admits that both she and Tom were both nervous about the material. Quote, "You're dealing with subject matter that is dangerous. For us, it came along at a time in our marriage when we were ready to do it. We'd been married for 7 years, and so we said, okay, we're willing to start talking about the things that a lot of the time we try to quell or try to pretend aren't there. Desire, attraction to other people, all sorts of things." Despite the challenge ahead, Cruise and Kidman were unshakable in their support and enthusiasm for Kubrick. They knew that they were in for a long haul, but they may not have realized exactly how long it would be.
Did I like the character?
Yeah. You like him?
That's a great question. I found him frustrating at times, the Doctor, personally, and I found him to be a very difficult character to play.
Cruise took on the task of playing the emotionally repressed Dr. Bill Harford with that usual Tom Cruise can-do attitude, talking at length with Kubrick about Bill's history, psychology, and motivations.
Stanley was very specific, and we worked long on finding the behavior of Dr. Bill, how he would retreat back into himself, into the security of his own authority.
One key element of Dr. Bill came from Kubrick himself. In a 2012 interview for Interview magazine, Cruise said, "The character I'm playing, and Stanley and I spoke about this, is using a title as a doctor as a way to open doors and as a weapon."
You know what they say. Once a doctor, always a doctor.
Stanley's own father was a doctor. People look at doctors like they know everything, and Stanley was very cynical about that. People using their titles or power to allow themselves into places and to exploit others and the situation. I'm working on my Tom Cruise impersonation. We don't have the budget to hire our Tom Cruise impersonator again, so you gotta deal with me. One initial hurdle that presented itself was how different this character was from Tom in real life, or his other roles. This wasn't a charming romantic lead or an alpha male action hero. He was playing against type, and he knew it.
It really is not the kind of person that I am, that contained, non-communicative, likes the daily routine, the stability of his life, just ignoring his wife and that relationship, and just not wanting to rock the boat. Taking things for granted, Bill did. Took her for granted, took his family for granted, his life for granted.
As for Nicole Kidman, she seemed to feel more comfortable in her role as Bill's wife, Alice, a seemingly content woman secretly wrestling with boredom and unacknowledged desire. When asked in an LA Times interview what part of herself she brought to Alice, her response was, quote, "My boldness. I'm quite upfront, and Alice becomes quite upfront."
My name is Alice Harford. I'm American.
Also, since Cruise and Kidman obviously shared some pivotal screen time together, Kubrick spent nearly 2 months with them before shooting even started. The process was, by all accounts, a mix of rehearsal and kind of in-depth discussion about Cruise and Kidman's marriage, with an agreement that any intimate details would stay between them. Kidman recalled that Cruise, quote, "heard things he didn't want to hear," This was only the beginning of an immersive acting experience that would consistently blur lines between fiction and reality. It's crazy to me that there were only 3 people who knew every aspect of Cruise and Kidman's marriage, and they're just all in this picture. For further immersion, Kubrick encouraged both of them to decorate their characters' apartment. They chose the curtains, the color of the window blinds. Cruise put some loose change on the bedside table. You can kind of see it right there. Kidman brought some books to put on the shelf and to scatter around. She wore some of her own clothes and glasses, earrings, and wedding ring. And the two even spent the night on the set occasionally. By the end of the shoot, Cruise admits that they felt like they actually lived there.
How do I look?
Perfect.
And finally, the fact that Cruise and Kidman had been married since 1990 was a huge help. I mean, it sounds like a no-brainer, but it really was crucial in giving them kind of a head start on their preparation and their performance together.
Just in terms of working as a married couple together, there's an intimacy that you're allowed. I mean, you can touch each other. Sometimes with another actor, you have to build up that trust. You just immediately, you have that.
It's as if their first 6 years of marriage was just a rehearsal period for Eyes Wide Shut, and they didn't know it.
Like I remember in the scene when we were doing the nightmare scene, I call it, where he comes home and I'm in bed, and we did that took quite a long time to shoot, and we were working on that. And just having Tom there, who knows me and knows emotionally what can trigger me and stuff. He could whisper things to me before a take that would immediately put me into the scene. And the power of that, that was something that, a lot of the time you don't have with another actor because they don't understand your history. And you have a history together that can work for you.
So you got Kubrick, the puppet master here, just creating immersion and maybe playing some mind games with his actors. And then you got one of the actors, one of his puppets, and he's a little puppet master in himself, and he's whispering stuff to Nicole Kidman's ear and pulling her strings. It's like a whole web of lies. The whole thing just sounds really complicated. It speaks to how hard the actors really had to work and the mental toll that it took on them.
You will kindly remove your mask.
Now, all of this immersion, to me at least, would suggest that Kubrick wanted some amount of realism for the performances to feel authentic. Well, they do, but not quite. In a good way, and by design. Nicole Kidman's performance is a good example. It seems like audiences and critics alike kind of collectively agreed that she was too over the top or melodramatic, coming to the conclusion she's not that good. I don't believe her. Nobody in real life talks like that.
When she is having her little titty squeezed, do you think she ever has any little fantasies about what handsome Dr. Bill's Dickie might be like?
My initial response to a critique like that might be, well, it's a movie. But even that, it's actually kind of oversimplifying it, because the entire film is intentionally presented as a stylized dream, right? Things are supposed to feel off a little bit, maybe even on a subconscious level. One small example, right? So the film takes place in New York, but Kubrick built his own version of New York from memory. By the way, he wasn't looking at maps or anything. He was misremembering cross streets and buildings and was having somebody in New York take pictures, and they would tell him that street doesn't exist, and he just built it anyway. And so his version of New York had restaurants and shops just named after crew members and relatives. It's all this subtle facade.
People said, well, the streets don't look like New York. I said, well, in a way, I said, it doesn't matter. Look at the name of the street. I said, no such street exists in New York. I said, in a funny way, it's as if you're experiencing New York in a dream, It seems like New York, but it's not. It seems like your wife, But what is she telling me? And do I want to know? Maybe I shouldn't ask.
During a press conference, Kidman and Cruise go into more detail on the kind of performance that Kubrick was looking for.
I'm not interested in naturalism, in a sense of, he said, I don't want to see a documentary. I want to see something slightly more heightened than that.
He felt that anyone could be, he felt that anyone could be real, but that he was looking for something that was interesting and what excited him as a director. So he wanted it to be spontaneous when we were working on the scene.
This doesn't seem unique to Eyes Wide Shut, by the way. Like, when you think about it, none of Kubrick's films feel real in a natural sense. They're full of these kind of similarly unnaturalistic performances that sort of heighten the surreal quality.
He once said to, I believe it was Matthew Modine on Full Metal Jacket, after a certain take, and Matthew said, "Ooh, that felt good, that felt real." And Stanley said, "Real is good, interesting is better." And that's the way he worked. I mean, there's nothing real about any of those movies that he made, but they're hypnotic. To me, they are.
Cruise's performance, on the other hand, was deliberately honed by Kubrick to sort of be more subdued and detached. Like, there's no hint of pep in this guy, even physically. Like, if you watch one of those Tom Cruise runs montages, there's a reason there's nothing in there from Eyes Wide Shut. In a 2025 interview for the British Film Institute, Cruise said, "There was a constant conversation with Stanley and I in terms of what the rhythm of the walking is and us finding it. I'm a very fast walker." We just slowed everything down and tried different speeds of walking. Similar to Kidman's performance, it seems like Cruise's performance was initially taken at face value. In a 2012 article for Cinephilia Beyond, Sven Mikulek writes, now this is like from a guy who seems like he analyzes a lot of movies, seems like a film professor. I'm going to read it in kind of a different voice here. "Cruise's distanced, obvious insensitivity and certain woodenness that some complained about upon the film's release actually fits in perfectly with the filmmaker's assumed vision. Cruise's character leads the audience onto a voyeuristic journey of intimate self-discovery, and his performance, labeled underachieving by critics who just might have misunderstood Kubrick's intentions, allows the viewer to more easily relate to the character by projecting their own image onto the actor's frequently blank face."
You're gonna need some rehab. You know that, don't you?
I know.
Knowing this, it helped me see Cruise and Kidman's work in Eyes Wide Shut in a new light. Actors over the years have expressed frustration, to say the least, with dialing into Kubrick's exact radio frequency of real yet heightened acting. It's something that can't really be put into words, because it's in his head. And as we'll find out, Kubrick had his own way of helping scan through the static.
There's reality and there's pretend, and those lines get crossed, and it happens when you're working with a director that allows that to happen. It's a very exciting thing to happen. It's a very dangerous thing to happen as well. And when it does happen, I think that's when the work becomes so much more than just making a film.
As shooting began, Cruise, Kidman, and the rest of the cast began to experience firsthand the Kubrick filmmaking process, learning very quickly that the lots of takes urban legends were all true. Nobody, even Kubrick, knew when a scene would be done. Reactions and attitudes to this were mixed. Cruise and Kidman had expected it, and they were mentally prepared, with Cruise telling Kubrick at one point, "Stanley, look, I'm here for you. Whatever it's gonna take. We're gonna do this." Alan Cumming had a great time shooting his single scene as a hotel clerk, although his initial meeting with Kubrick was a little prickly when Kubrick had watched the audition tape for Alan Cumming and loved it, but Alan Cumming, who's Scottish, did an American accent on the tape, so Kubrick thought he was an American.
"Hello, Stanley, I'm Alan." And he went, "You're not American." I was like, "I know, Stanley, I'm Scottish." And he went, "You're American on the tape." And I went, "Yeah, that's because I'm an actor, Stanley."
I mean, kind of, you know, in retrospect, well, not in retrospect, I'm glad I said it because he sort of went, "Hmm." And after that, we got on like a house on fire. I mean, really had a lovely time.
It seems like it was always a bit of a mixed bag when working with Kubrick, depending on who you talk to. Like screenwriter of Eyes Wide Shut, Frederick Raphael.
Did I like him?
Yes, kinda.
Kubrick's family hates this guy, by the way. He wrote this book, Eyes Wide Open, which was this very detailed kind of memoir of him working on the script for Eyes Wide Shut with Kubrick. Harvey Keitel, on the other hand, who had originally played the part of Victor Ziegler, was fired mid-shoot and replaced by Sidney Pollack. When Gary Oldman was interviewed on Opie and Anthony, he shared his understanding of the story.
Yeah, so he's walking through a door, and I think that after the 68 take of this, walking through the door, Harvey Keitel just said, yeah, he said, I'm out of here, you're f***ing crazy.
68 takes a walk into the door, though, yeah.
You're f***ing out of your mind.
And that was it?
Yeah, and left.
Wow, damn, I never heard that one.
Because he didn't say, he would just say, do it again.
For the record, this is unconfirmed, and I don't even know what Gary Oldman has to do with Eyes Wide Shut. Why does he know this story? Why is he talking about it? Yeah, who knows? Keitel himself commented more vaguely in an interview for British television.
Mr. Kubrick did some things I objected to. I didn't like. I thought they were disrespectful, and I won't be disrespected by him or anybody. And if any actor can help it, they should help it.
Yeah.
You don't want to get fired.
No.
But I was.
Is that the Brooklyn in you, do you think?
It's a sense of worth in me.
So when Sidney Pollack came in to replace Keitel as Ziegler, he was more optimistic. All right, after nailing his scene with Tom at the cocktail party in just 2 hours, he was riding high, man.
I said, well, what are all these things I hear about? It's going to take forever. I went there, and 3 hours later, I was back at the hotel in London. This is going to be a snap.
But when it came time to shoot the final confrontation between Dr. Bill and Ziegler near the end of the film, reality began to set in.
We were doing the Steadicam shot of me coming into the room, you know, and so Sidney goes, look, all right, how do you want me to do this? And Stanley said, well, I don't know, let's try it and see. He says, well, I can go to the door fast. Okay, well, let's see what that's like. He says, okay, now open the door. And then he says, well, maybe that's a little too fast. Okay, I can go slower. So we start doing the scene this way.
By the third week, when we're in the billiard room, I'm saying, my God, this, how?
Of course, said Stanley, said, well, Sidney, I mean, I didn't think it would be much longer than that, but don't you want to get it right?
But Kidman and Cruise had the real endurance test here. As the shoot got longer and longer, Kubrick employed techniques that may or may not have been intended to enhance performances, but they were certainly challenges for the actors involved. For example, he had Cruise and Kidman share a trailer, telling them, quote, "You're not each getting a trailer. We can't afford it." Really? This is a guy who, he let the shoot go on for 400 days, but he won't let them have their own trailers because there's not money in the budget? I guess that could be true, but the more interesting version would be that he intended it to be this reason to force Cruise and Kidman to be together 24/7. It's not like Cruise could just go take a break and compartmentalize. It's like, oh, there she is. He's going home to his co-star every day.
As good as we are working together, at times it was, because when you're working with someone else, there's a relief. You go home.
And it lives with you for 24 hours a day, so you are connected for a very, very long period in work and in your private life.
Although according to Kidman in a 2024 interview for the LA Times, Tom did have his own little area in the trailer where he would play Minesweeper. That's true. That's not a joke. That's kind of hysterical to me. Just imagining the intensity of Tom Cruise sweeping mines. Man, I guess whatever you can do to escape, I guess. But then Kubrick began doing something that, if it was intentional, it was downright diabolical. Now, I'm being careful with my words here about what's fact, what's fiction. A lot of people, myself included, have gotten things wrong about Kubrick over the years. But as far as Kidman and Cruise were concerned, this deserves mentioning, and it seems by all accounts to be true. In the film, Alice admits to Bill that she lusted after a naval officer years ago.
I was ready to give up everything.
As the film continues, Bill imagines Alice with the naval officer in these quick flashes, these graphic sexual images, and he's just letting his jealous imagination run wild with what Alice told him. According to Eyes Wide Shut, Stanley Kubrick in the making of his final film, Kubrick banned Cruise from the set during the filming of these scenes and also forbade Kidman to disclose any details about the shoot to Cruise. At the same time, Kidman wasn't allowed to be present during the whole orgy sequence. And he said, Tom, don't tell her about all the cool stuff you saw. Super cool stuff. Additionally, according to the book, this seems to have been a way to foster psychological mistrust and insecurity between the actors. If Kubrick was intentional about this, then I'd imagine that both Kidman and Cruise knew what he was doing, right? They're not stupid. I think they would see through the lines, and they're professionals, right? Both of them had and have continued to do love scenes in films. They understand the boundaries. It's a movie. Even so, it's difficult to imagine that Cruise was completely, just 100% ambivalent to knowing absolutely no details about his wife spending, according to Vanity Fair, 6 days pretending to have sex in 50 different positions with a male model. And it's possible that, like Bill, Tom's head was full of images that he didn't want to see. But through all of this, what was Kubrick looking for, acting-wise, and how did he do it even when it seems he didn't know what he wanted in the first place?
After he says, "I'll tell you everything," there's a cut to you. You've been crying for hours. You're smoking. How did you achieve that?
I cried for hours.
To answer this, let's take a look at arguably the most important scene in the film, Bill and Alice's argument in their bedroom. It's the catalyst of the story, right? You know, everything's starting off great. You got a nice couple enjoying some of that marijuana, and Bill just says one wrong thing and an argument begins to unravel.
But I think we both know what men are like.
The whole scene is almost 14 and a half minutes long and took 3 weeks to shoot. Cruise, Kidman, and Kubrick all explored the scene in rehearsal before shooting, but as they shot the scene, that exploration didn't stop.
And I know you would never be unfaithful to me.
You are very sure of yourself, aren't you?
Both actors have described shooting this specific scene as a cyclical process of doing it, then doing it again, then doing it again but different. Discovering something unique that Kubrick liked. I liked that. Then Kubrick would go rewrite it, and then they'd come back. They do it again, they do it again, they do it again. They try something. I like that. Rewrite again, try, rewrite again, try, rewrite again, and so on and so forth until the end of time.
Things would just come out. She would ad-lib, when she was going along, and Stanley would write it down, and then he would, come back and edit things out. Or tell her, I like that moment, keep that in there. And that's really how the scene evolved.
So through improv and rewrites, the scene, at least, according to Kubrick and the actors, was getting better and better and better. And it would reach this point where nobody could conceivably think of any way to improve it. And yet they would.
But then as the scene progressed, as take after take doing it, you'd feel the scene reach a level, and everyone felt, oh, that's acceptable, that's interesting. And then we'd keep working on it, and it would feel bad, it was stale, it wasn't working. And then suddenly we could feel it break into a place that none of us had really thought of before.
In this way, it literally wasn't about something being right or wrong. It was purely Kubrick searching for moments that piqued his interest. I think what Kidman says here seems right on the money.
It was never about, we have a week to shoot this scene, so quick. We have to do it. Let's see. We may not fully explore it, but we'll get something good. As Stanley wanted to explore every avenue and then make his decisions based on that. And Stanley was not restricted by time. He refused to be. And that is a great luxury that only somebody like he could afford because of what he'd achieved through his career, to be able to say, do you want to know what's gold with filmmaking? Time is gold. Not having to walk away from a scene before you feel like you really perfected it.
One other element to Kubrick's repeated takes is the actual physical exhaustion it inflicts on the actors. Kidman herself says that she did the scene so many times that eventually she just forgot the cameras were even there or that they were rolling.
With Stanley, you get to the stage where you don't notice any of it. Partly you're tired, which is actually a very good thing sometimes when you're acting, because it means that you're not trying to produce emotions or trying to be this or thinking this is how it should be. It just happens and just sort of comes out of you.
See, to me, that's something that makes every Kubrick movie special. You know, if you know even a little bit about how Kubrick worked across the board as a director, then you know that whatever you're watching is unique, right? Whether it's a flawlessly framed shot of Barry Lyndon made to resemble a live-action Renaissance painting, or a dolly shot revealing the extravagant design of the Korova milk bar in A Clockwork Orange. It's all been so carefully thought out, shot over and over again, until it reached this echelon of Kubrick's interpretation of perfection.
The last day of shooting, a day that I, had both looked forward to and dreaded. Looked forward to because I just, there was enough with Dr. Bill in some ways, and dreaded because I didn't want the experience with Stanley to end.
By the end of the shoot, Cruise and Kidman were both exhausted. Still, any quote from them you read, they have just firmly defended Kubrick and clearly viewed the whole shoot as an invigorating, life-changing experience. Like the way they talk about Kubrick, it's like they were a family for 2 years. But then people like to dig and try and find some muck, like one of the topics that got mixed in with all the salacious rumors of the production is that the shoot was a major factor in Cruise and Kidman's eventual divorce in 2001. Who knows? Like, whatever, right? In the words of William Friedkin,
I don't give a flying f*** into a rolling donut.
But what did strike me as true and genuine was the love and respect that Cruise and Kidman had for Stanley. On the last day of shooting in the toy store, Cruise recalls a nice moment he had with the director.
I said, I love you, Stanley. You know that. And he turned to me and he was just right there. And it was just a quiet moment. It was late at night. And he said, I love you too. And he said, thank you. And I said, thank you.
It was a dream job for them, to work with one of the greats. And they were two actors that were aware of the challenges and they just gave it their all. And you could say a lot of stuff about Tom Cruise. I know I have, and our more speculative is Tom Cruise real video. But in every interview, I saw nothing but just complete dedication from a guy who just worked his ass off for somebody that he respected and loved. And along with Stanley's immediate family and his close crew that he worked with, Tom was completely blindsided and devastated to hear about Stanley's sudden death after screening the film for Cruise and Kidman just days prior.
Now, I shared 3 years of my life with this man, and
it must have been an unbelievable thing to have heard that he died so soon after the film had been finished. What was that to your immediate reaction?
My immediate reaction was one of absolute shock. And disbelief.
Kidman, who had come to see Kubrick as kind of this warm father figure, took it a lot harder.
He seemed to have too many other things to do and say. And it's still very, sorry. Oh.
I'll move from that just for a second.
I didn't like Eyes Wide Shut when I first watched it. Then I watched it again and I was like, all right, I like it. Then I saw it again and I loved it. That seems to be the process with like Kubrick movies. Even Spielberg talked about this.
And I didn't love Shining the first time I saw it. I have since seen Shining 25 times, one of my favorite pictures. Kubrick films tend to grow on you. You have to see them more than once, but the wild thing is, I defy you to name me one Kubrick film that you can turn off once you started. It's impossible.
So when I watched it a fourth time and learned all about how it came together and the close working relationship that Kubrick had with Cruise and Kidman, I respect it on a whole other level, and I genuinely consider it a masterpiece. And as far as the acting, it's an amazing accomplishment when you think about it. Like, it's one thing to hire a real married couple for your film to achieve a sense of realism, right? They did that in Matilda, but it's not, okay.
You're such a baby, stop it! 5 is a fuse to the head!
But to then have the luxury of time to explore every scene and hone the performances to this vague, delicate balance of real and heightened, and to have actors that have the talent and the patience and the work ethic to pull it off. I would say for a director, that's like catching lightning in a bottle. But in this rare instance, the director had the ability to control and redirect lightning into hundreds of bottles as many times as he saw fit, and then put them on display for all time. You can't say that happens every day.